Hello, this is Andrine, a Jewish American priestess, and today I'm coming to you with a reading with this brand new deck, the Netivot Wisdom Oracle by Kohenet Ketzira HaMagalit. That is Ketzira, the circle weaver. And we were brought together in a twist of fate, I guess, having to do with COVID and the Kohenet Hebrew Priestess Institute. And so today I finally have received this deck that they have been working on for so long and that has come into my hands at last. And so I'm going to do a reading, and I'm going to pull out some cards from the deck, and then we'll do Hebrunes on top of those to see what kind of twist of fate is playing out for you right now in your world. So let's get started with some cards. This is the 8-Ot Netivot Wisdom Oracle. Netivot are the priestess pathways that are spoken of in the Hebrew Priestess Institute of Kohenet. There are 13 priestess pathways, and these cards represent different aspects of each of them. So I'm really curious to see what comes out today in this discussion of twists of fate that are coming up to fruition, maybe in your life or about to come in. We'll see when we get into the readings. I love combining and recombining different aspects and different oracles, and this one I've been really anticipating for some time, so real excited to be here today. Whoop, that one wants to leap out. Okay, so we have 3 different cards, and we'll turn them over, and then when we get into each of the readings, we'll read from the booklet about what each of these cards represents. So let's starting with card number 1. We have Immah, nurture and be nurtured. This is card number 1. Card number 2 brings us the Leitzanit. It says, see the impact before you act. And card number 3, the Tzovah, create and care for sacred space. All right, so take a moment to discern which of these cards is calling to you today for a reading. And the way we'll do this is I will put the timestamps in the description box below. And then as we get into the reading, we'll read in the book each of the cards and put some Hebrunes down as well to give us an idea of, again, what is the twisted path of fate bringing you right now. So I'll see you in your readings. Welcome, card number 1. Let's take a closer look at your card. So this card represents the Immah, or mother, in the Netivot pathways. And it's specifically the vessel of Immah. And the way this deck is structured, each of the cards in each Netivah represents a different phase of the moon. The vessel is the phase of the moon that corresponds to the full moon. It's a manifestation of the divine as it appears in human form, work, and dreams. The Immah itself is, of course, the mother, and you can see this image on the card represents that mother. This is what it says in the booklet. I bring nourishment, support, and protection. When you need me, I am here to nurture and help you nurture, to support you and help you support, to protect and help you protect. I am the embodiment of love in action, Immah. And specific to the vessel, nurture and be nurtured. Vessels of the Immah both confirm and challenge our notion of nurture. Some may see a woman nursing her child. Others may see an aunt, sister, or a family member of any gender caring for a child. These private moments are only possible when there is community support. What systems and structures are in place that allow you to nourish, support, and protect those you mother? What twists of fate have led you to nurture others and be nurtured by others? Let's take out some Hebrunes to get further clarity about this. At the top we have the letter Tzadi. In the center we have the letter Lamed. And at the bottom we have the letter Vav. So with regards to twists of fate that have brought us to where we are now or that are coming into fruition, let's take a look and see how nurturing and being nurtured is playing into that for you today. Tzadi, at the top of our reading, this is the position that represents that which is coming down from divinity. And so this is a fullness, this is a vessel, a way that the divine is flowing through us to correspond to that fullness of the full moon, a manifestation of divinity as it appears in our work. And the Tzadi itself is a letter that represents justice. It's the first letter of the word tzadik, which means a righteous person, as well as tzedek, which means justice itself. Tzedek is also the name of the planet Jupiter, which is the biggest planet in our solar system. So it's got this fullness to it, this very large manifestation to the Tzadi. Tzadi is the number 90 in Gematria. And with regards to the Immah, the mother here, how I'm seeing that is the number 9 is the letter Tet. The letter Tet, which is a cup or a vessel and sometimes seen as a womb space. And 10 times 9 brings us to Tzadi. So Tet is the first letter of the word good, which is Tov in Hebrew. And this is an ultimate manifestation of goodness and gestation. So Tzadi is that number 90. 90 is how old our matriarch Sarah was when Yitzhak was born, her only child. So she waited an incredibly long time for this gestation to happen and be born. She was quite elderly when Yitzhak was born, according to Torah. So there's this mothering, this fullness, this waiting period that's brought us here. Wherever you are right now, there's been a very long time coming of gestation of goodness. This 10 times 9, this ultimate manifestation of Tov, meaning good, and the ultimate manifestation of gestation. This letter does correspond to the month of Shvat, which is the month that's just ended, right before we were coming into this reading. And Shvat is the time of year where we celebrate the new year of the trees. Trees are barren, we can't see anything on them, but the sap is beginning to rise. The trees also represent the Asherah, the indwelling presence of the divine feminine that exists within the trees. And Asher is the tribe that is affiliated with the Tzadi and the month of Shvat. So Asher, which means happiness, is here, as well as this gestation. And you may know that the name Yitzhak, the son of Sarah, is laughter. So there's this idea of laughter, happiness, joy, the divine feminine, gestation, this ultimate manifestation of something good that is coming through, the Asherah. So I love that this is affiliated with the Immah, the mother, because it does have that ultimate manifestation of gestation, that it's related to the matriarch Sarah because of the 90 here, the 90 being the number of years old that Sarah was when Yitzhak was born, and this grandiosity of the planet Jupiter here, which represents sort of a giant largeness of an ultimate manifestation of something gestating. And that's what has brought us here in this twisted path of fate, that we've been waiting a very, very long time for something to gestate and become born. And finally it's coming. Finally it's here with the Immah, with the mother, with the vessel who is nurturing and being nurtured by the divine here. In the center of our reading, we have what's challenging. This is the position of what is a challenge or a fear maybe in our situation. And we have the letter Lamed. Lamed, which is the one letter in Hebrew that reaches above the line. You can see that it's got that sort of sprout coming up from the top and sort of a root coming down from the bottom as well. So there's something that has been sprouting, trying to reach up with hope. And because this is in the position of the challenge, it makes me wonder if there's been a period of time that you've lost hope, that you didn't feel that connection with your heart. It's the first letter of the word Lev, which means heart-mind. It's about having hope and reaching up with heart toward the divine. But because of this long waiting period, maybe there's been a period of time where you were afraid that things weren't going to work out, that you didn't feel connected to divinity. You didn't feel rooted in your earth or planted here, that there's been this sort of crookedness, this twist that's happened in the center here, where with our hearts sinking, with our hearts not being able to elevate, with this loss of hope. Lamed represents the intestines in the body. So maybe there's been this sinking gut feeling that there's been some issue with your belly and not feeling well, not feeling that connection, not being able to digest what you've absorbed, taking things in and just feeling like, ugh, I can't digest this, this is too much, or I'm not getting enough information to discern what to keep and what to let go of. It's just been a really long wait. There's been a fear about things not turning out, that perhaps there is no hope, that you've lost your optimism for a period of time because this has taken so long. Lamed is connected to the foundation of action in the Sefer Yetzirah. So maybe it's been challenging to take action because it's been so long in coming, that you haven't had the hope, you haven't felt optimistic about things, that you haven't felt that you've been protected or nurtured. And the final letter in our reading represents that which is our advice or our outcome here. And we have the letter Vav. And the letter Vav is this tall, straight letter. It's like a person standing with their head slightly bowed. We've got a little humility here. And Vav is literally the word and in Hebrew. So it's all about connection. It's about tapping into the earth like a taproot and reaching up with aspiration for the divine. So even though this one is twisted and have had difficulty reaching up, that the root went down, but there's been a kind of twist and a difficulty reaching up with hope, the Vav is saying, reach up, connect with divinity, connect with the earth as well. It is the letter that represents a peg or a hook in the Old Hebrew. And these pegs or hooks were used to connect things together, to tether the Mishkan, the tent of meeting, to the earth. It connected the veils around the Holy of Holies with this incredibly precious material, these pins or hooks. A way to protect, a way to nurture, and to tether things, even when they seem untethered. So it's about unity with divinity, with yourself and with another, joining heaven and earth. And Vav is the number 6, so it represents the 6th day of creation, the day in which humans were created, that time when the divine breathed life into a formation of earth and mud and gave it reason and the ability to speak. So that 6th day of creation is here. And so it speaks to this idea of something almost being completed. It's the last day of active creation. So this twist of fate is completed, and now it's almost time to rest. It's this time to connect right now with each other, with the divine, with yourself. And Vav is also connected to the sense of hearing. And hearing is really essential for connection. Listening to another's voice, listening possibly to the cry of your infant self as it calls out for connection with the divine, listening to the divine to hear what messages are coming down. So the way I'm reading this with the Immah, the vessel of nurturing and being nurtured, there's been a really long gestation, and yet there's great joy in the birth. That we've been waiting for justice, perhaps. We've been waiting for righteousness. We've been waiting for a birth. Something that we've been creating is finally coming into fruition. That it is full of the divine feminine presence. And that there is joy there. That there's been a challenging time of connection and hope. There's been a challenging time of feeling our hearts being connected to divinity, that maybe our hearts have sunk for a period of time when we didn't know, because of the long wait, how things were going to turn out. But finally we're coming to a place of connection. Finally we're coming to a place where we are implored to connect, to listen, to reach up, to stand firm and plant ourselves in the earth, reach our head toward the heavens, to tether ourselves and each other to the earth, to set up good boundaries around the veil that is precious, to protect that which needs protecting, perhaps even our infant selves, our inner child. And when we do that, we will find that nurture. We will find that connection with the Divine Mother, that we can become like her, that we can tap into that nurturing, tap into that part of ourselves, that the Divine Mother is here with us, both protecting us and giving us the energy and will and knowledge about how to protect ourselves and each other. And that our twist of fate, even though it's taken a long time to come, is being born now in joy. And that we finally have that connection. So for those of you who chose Immah, Nurture and Be Nurtured today, this has been your reading. I hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing you here next time. Hello, card number 2. Those of you who chose the Leitzanit. Let's take a closer look at your card. It's a very cool image. The Leitzanit represents the sacred fool. And at the top it says, see the impact before you act. And we see an eye in the center here, kind of peering through between some kind of veils or structure. This particular card in the Leitzanit represents the gift of the Leitzanit. And the gift in this deck structure is what is flowing to us from the divine and corresponds with the waxing moon, the beginning of the month. These are divine spiritual gifts that help us on our path. Let's read from the book a little bit about the Leitzanit. The sacred fool is the Netivot, the spirit pathway that happens during the month of Adar. But in this year, when we have 2 Adars, this happens the 2nd Adar. So not the month where we're doing this reading, but next month. This is what it says. I bring laughter to confront painful truths, embrace change, and challenge expectations. My laughter comes from joy, despair, anger, and relief. I question your assumptions, challenge accepted truths, and say what no one else will. I am the embodiment of purposeful mischief, bodiness, and the release that allows for rebirth. Leitzanit. And specifically, the gift of the Leitzanit is to see the impact before you act. The gift of the Leitzanit is zechirut, illuminated awareness, literally caution. Fools use humor and even totally inappropriate behavior with forethought and wisdom, to reveal truths we don't want to acknowledge. A Leitzanit cultivates zehirut, to know what is coming before they speak truth to power. And a little more, the root of zehirut, zayin he resh, is the same root as the word zohar, shining, splendor, which is also the name of a foundational text of Jewish Kabbalistic mysticism. All Hebrew words have 3 or 4-letter roots. According to the Shorashim, the book of Hebrew word roots, zayin he resh means to shine, be bright, glow, radiate, gleam, reflect light, to teach, warn, admonish, be strict, careful, cautious, take heed or care, beware, and caution. What a lot is that? So that's your basic card for the twist of fate that has brought you here. So let's pull out some Hebrew letters as well to further illuminate the twist of fate that has brought us here today. These 3 letters. Coming down from the top, we have the resh. In the center, we have tzadi. And at the bottom, we have dalet. So for those of you who are the sacred fool today, the Leitzanit, seeing your impact before you act, what's coming down from above is the letter resh. And resh is the letter that means head. It's the Rosh, the new beginning. It's right there in the first word of Torah, Bereshit, meaning in the beginning. And so it has to do with the head, so it has to do with new beginnings, as well as the thought and intellect that goes inside the head. And I think that's the twist that brings us here, is this, maybe you're silly, maybe you're doing something that is revealing others, but you're also cautious. You're being able to think before you act, to see how things will play out, to know where that line is between what you can say and what you can't say, and the way of saying it also that will become clear to you. The resh is also a bowed head. You can see it's bent over. So it has a little bit of humility to it. It's knowing when to duck your head when you're going into one of these situations where you're maybe going to make a mockery of someone in order to shed the light or the truth on the situation. It has to do with the planet Mercury. It's the letter that rules over the planet Mercury in the sky in the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation. So communication is essential here, as well as the right ear. So being able to hear things correctly, to know what it is you're making mockery of, perhaps. And so there's a new beginning. Something has come to a head. You're using your brains, you're using your thoughts, you're using your intellect, you're ducking your head when necessary in order to be cautious, as well as listening really carefully with your right ear and speaking clearly what needs to be spoken in this situation, in this twist of fate that has brought you here. And I see the resh also corresponding to the matriarch Rachel in Torah. And Rachel is a complicated character. She's somebody who had this complicated situation where Yaakov shows up, he wants to marry her, her sister is switched for her during the wedding ceremony, so he ends up marrying her sister Leah, and then he has to work another 7 years in order to be able to marry Rachel, and then she turns out to be barren for a very long period of time. She also stole her father's idols from his home when she left his home. And then she lied about it on the road on the way out. So there's this complicated character she's righteous because she is one of our matriarchs and she's the chosen one of Yaakov, but she did some maybe questionable things in terms of stealing from her father and then lying about it. And she has this, some think that it's a punishment, that this is why she was barren. In the Sefer Yetzirah, Resh is affiliated with the binary transformation of seed and barrenness. So perhaps we've planted a seed, but we don't know how it's going to turn out. Again, Rosh is the beginning of a new thing, ahead of a new thing. So this Resh represents the planting of a thing and not really knowing how it's going to turn out. And that's where we are in this reading right now. We're trying to see the impact of things before we act. So we're using our intellect, we're bowing our head, being cautious, starting a new thing and not knowing how it's going to turn out. Somewhere along that line of seed and barrenness is the Resh. And again, we're listening with our right ear. We're speaking clearly with the communication planet of Mercury here. That's what's coming down from above. In the center of our reading, we have the letter Tzadi, and Tzadi is the letter that begins the word tzedek, meaning justice. This is the position of what is the fear or challenge here. Tzadi being in the center here makes me think that there's some issue with justice. Is justice going to be served? Do we know how to be a tzaddik, a righteous person in the situation? It's a tricky balance between doing what is right and knowing how to do that. One of the interesting things about Tzadi is that you can see that it looks a little bit like a bent nun with a yud on the back of it. So on some level it represents humility. Nun is the letter that represents humility with ne'aman, meaning humble. And yud represents the one point, the divine, the first letter of the divine name. So humility with divinity at the back of it. And so there may be a challenge right now. There may be a fear about how do we remain humble? How do we know that the divine has our back in these situations? How do we bring forward justice? How do we become the tzaddik? There's a fear or a challenge around that. And interestingly, Tzadi is the foundation of thought, whereas Resh has this concept of the intellect. So even though we're trying to use our intellect to think our way through and to know what we're going to do before we act, there may be some challenges around the foundation of thought. Maybe we're thinking too much, we're overthinking it, not really feeling into our bodies. Tzadi also has this, it's the number 90 in Gematria, so it has this implication of a very, very long gestation. This is seed and barrenness with the matriarch Rachel, and Tzadi has this affiliation with the matriarch Sarah because it's the number 90, how old Sarah was when Yitzhak was born. So there may be a long gestation here, that we have to wait a long time before a birth. There may be seeds have been planted and there's barrenness or apparent barrenness because we're in this long gestation period with the number 99 being the number of months of pregnancy, and the letter Tet, which represents a vessel or a womb. But 10 times 9 is that enduring long gestation period that happens. So our challenge here may be waiting out the long gestation, being able to think clearly, being able to perceive how justice will come through with this. Knowing how to be a tzaddik, knowing how to be a righteous person in this situation that is maybe a little complicated. Because the sacred fool is a complex character, trying to speak the truth to power using humor. And our final letter in this reading is the Dalet. And Dalet is the letter that represents a doorway. It's also a birth canal, so there is an eventual birth here. This seed and barrenness and this very long gestation is coming to a birth. Dalet represents that doorway and the gateway, a portal of some sort. And it also corresponds to humility. So the word dal means a poor person or a poor one. And I like that this eye looks like she's peeking through a door frame. So our outcome here is the doorway. There is a doorway that is coming, that we need to remain humble, have some humility. Dalet is also the binary transformation of wisdom and foolishness, and perfect for the Leitzanit, the sacred fool. So we have this ability to discern, that we're thinking, using our intellect, that we have to discern where do we become wise and where do we use our foolishness in order to communicate clearly. How do we step through the doorway toward being born, coming into fruition? What is the thing that is going to propel us through that doorway? Is it just time? Is it just a very long gestation that we have to endure in order to be born? I see the Dalet as corresponding to the matriarch Rebecca, Rivka, because she entered the doorway of Sarah's tent and became a portal for Yaakov to enter the world. So she's sort of between these two. She's the mother of Yaakov and the wife of Yitzhak. So she is this portal through which these two are connected. The beginning and the justice, the transformation that happens in the doorway, that portal, that liminal space, that door frame through which this eye is looking. And sometimes I see Dalet as a transition that is akin to death. Not a literal death necessarily, but a metaphorical death. Something has to change. You can't stand in the doorway forever. You have to pass through. So it's a challenging thing to walk through the doorway, but it is an important thing. You can't stay in the womb forever. One has to be born eventually. So for those of you who chose the Leitzanit, the gift here of seeing the impact before you act, we're starting out with the head, where a new beginning is happening. We're having to use our brains, our thoughts, in order to discern what is the right way to go, whether the seed we plant will bring fruit. Our challenge here is the justice piece, the gestation, the very long gestation of that 90 years that we're having to wait in order to see the joy of the birth. And the outcome here is the birth canal. It's that birth, that challenging birth, perhaps. But we do finally pass through the doorway. We've been peeking through that doorway, and then at the end, we discern where is the wisdom and where is the foolishness. How can we use our foolishness, our sacred foolishness, in order to bring wisdom out into the open, in order to maybe reveal truth through humor, the way a jester is able to mock the king to bring truth to light. So for those of you who chose Leitzanit, this has been your message. This is the twisted path of faith, a new beginning, a twisting time of gestation, and finally a birth. Walking through the door, using your foolishness to illuminate wisdom. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this reading. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I will look forward to seeing you here next time. Hello, card number 3. Those of you who chose the Tzovah. Create and care for sacred space. Let's take a closer look at your card here. I love this. So we have a picture of a copper bowl that is sort of a altarpiece, and it's sitting inside of a copper bowl that is an altarpiece. I love this. So here we have create and care for sacred space, the Shrinekeeper, Tzovah. And you'll see at the bottom there's a little bit of an O, which represents the offering piece of this deck. And in this deck structure, the offerings are what flow back from us out into the world and to the divine. And they correspond with the waning moon. These are the tools we use as part of our divine work or service. The Tzovah, or Shrinekeeper, is the one who takes care of sacred space. This is what it says in the booklet. I bring self-awareness, guard thresholds, and guide ceremony and ritual. I am both the guardian of the gateways and the keeper of sacred space. I am the embodiment of choice, transition, and holy service. Tzovah. And the offering piece of this, create and care for sacred space, the offering of a Tzovah are the markers that indicate sacred space. In the Torah, we are taught that the Tzovot, the shrine keepers, offered their sacred mirrors to become the washing bowl for the Kohanim, the priests. Used with care, nearly anything can become an offering to tend and transform space and time, to create sacred altars wherever they may be needed. The image in this photo is a photo that Katsira took of the central altar at Kohenet Hebrew Priestess Institute Training Week. In the center is the copper bowl with broken mirrors in the bottom that Cohort Gimel gifted to Kohenet Priestess Institute. The Hebrew, which does not appear on the actual bowl, is from Exodus 38:8. In translation, he made the laver of copper and its stand of copper from the mirrors of the Tzovot at the entrance of the tent of meeting. So this is Tzovah, the create and care for sacred space, Shrinekeeper. So what twisted path of fate is showing up for you right now as a Shrinekeeper in your life? What are the sacred spaces that you are tending, creating, and caring for? Let's pull out some Hebrew letters to find out more. At the top we have the letter Dalet. In the center we have the letter Aleph. And at the bottom we have the letter Tzadi. Starting at the top, the letter Dalet coming down from divine. The letter Dalet is a doorway, a birth canal, a transition, a portal of some kind. It is the binary transformation of wisdom and foolishness. So what's showing up right now in terms of your twisted path of fate in this time is a doorway. Some kind of portal is here. And maybe you're tending a doorway. Maybe this is what the sacred space is, that you're the guardian of that doorway. And it could be a doorway that's a literal doorway. Maybe you're the person who greets people at your place of worship or your home, because our homes are also sacred space. Maybe you're a person who makes amulets, mezuzot, the little amulets that we use to mark our doorways in Judaism. Something is up with doorways. Knowing how to protect and guard thresholds. And it could be a metaphorical threshold as well. It could be the beginning of a new thing, that it's time to walk through a doorway and start a new project. That can also be sacred space, sacred time, which is a form of space, let's say. It can also be a physical portal. Perhaps you're guarding your physical space. This could also have to do with sexuality. This is the delta of Venus, or the birth canal. So perhaps there's a guardianship here around your own body, what you're letting in. Whatever the case is, there's some sort of doorway that you are the Shrinekeeper for. That you need to take time to discern, what is it you are guarding right now? What doorway are you minding? Who are you letting in and letting out? What kind of boundaries have you set up for yourself? Are you somebody who ushers others through the doorway? Are you a midwife, perhaps, or a death doula who's helping folks cross through a portal of some sort? There's some twist of fate here that has brought you to this doorway, to this sacred space. And the divine is giving you an opportunity to tend that right now as Shrinekeeper. The center letter in our reading represents the fear or the challenge in this endeavor. And we have the letter Aleph, which is the number 1. It's the mother letter of air and breath. So maybe there's a challenge right now with just breathing into it. Perhaps there's a challenge with connecting to the one. Maybe there's a fear about balance. Aleph is seen as the balance of above and below. You can see the Yud in the upper right corner and in the lower left corner, and this Vav connecting between. That's sort of like a balance, a scales. How do we balance the connection with divinity and the connection with the earth? How do we breathe into discomfort? Or if we're a birth midwife or a doula, how do we help another to breathe? How do we make space for the air that needs to come into a thing? Sometimes I see Aleph as a crossroads. Maybe we're at this crossroads, that there's a doorway that we're having to decide what direction to go once we've come through that doorway. Aleph can also be representative of the spring of the year. So as we come into this time of spring, as we're transitioning through the last days of winter, how do we prepare our space and care for the sacredness of the transition to a new season, to a new year, really? Aleph is also the first letter of most of the names of the divine in Torah. We've got El, Elohim, El Elyon, Adonai. And it's also the first letter of the word Adam, Adamah, which is human or earth. So that balancing between divinity and humanity. In the very, very ancient Paleo-Hebrew, it was a cow's head, the Aleph was, and so it can represent cattle, worth, wealth in our lives. So perhaps we're having difficulty discerning our worth. We're just breathing space into the situation. There may be a fear around this crossroads we're at and not knowing what direction to go. Finding the balance of divinity and humanity, oneness, and new beginnings. Because, of course, the number one is the new beginning. So that's the challenge here as we enter this doorway, as we protect this doorway with our Shrinekeeper caring for this sacred space. Our outcome letter in this reading is the letter Tzadi. And it's interesting because Tzadi has shown up in every one of these readings today in a different place. So we have the Tzadi. Tzadi represents justice, tzedek, and righteousness. Tzaddik is a righteous person. And our outcome here is justice. Our outcome here is righteousness. Tzadi is also the first letter of the word tzayid, which means hunting, and can speak to the idea of searching for the different aspects of divinity in the world. So the outcome here is hunting for the divine in all things, finding justice in all things, being righteous in this role as sacred Shrinekeeper. Tzadi is affiliated with the tribe of Asher. Asher was one of the sons of Zilpah, the handmaid of Leah, and it means happy. But it's also said that it's possible that Asher was a reference to the Asherah, the divine feminine who dwells within the trees. And there were keepers of the groves of the Asherah as well, those who tended to the terebinths, which were groves of trees where the divine feminine was worshipped. And this has been blotted out in our history. But we may have a desire or a calling to care for those trees again. Tzadi is the letter that represents the month of Shvat. Shvat is the month that is where we celebrate the new year of the trees and Tu B'Shvat. And that's the month that just passed. So it makes me think of that celebration, the celebration of the trees and the rising of the sap. That maybe our calling as a Shrinekeeper to create and care for sacred space has to do with caring for the earth, caring for the trees, caring for the sacredness of the Asherah that dwells within the trees, represented by the tribe of Asher, and bringing justice and fairness and balance again to the earth. So the way I'm seeing this reading as a whole is our twist of fate is bringing us to the role of Shrinekeeper, creating and caring for sacred space, the Tzovah. Right now we're at the precipice, we're at a doorway, we're guarding a doorway that is telling us it's time to walk through. There's a transition that needs to happen. Our challenge is this crossroads we're at. What direction do we go? As the Shrinekeeper, how do we call in the oneness of the divine? How do we balance the divinity above and the humanity below to create that sacred space? Because it requires both. It requires a connection between the divine above and the earth below. And because it is tapping into the earth with the Aleph, with the Adamah, and we have Tzadi at the end here, I'm guessing that it has to do with taking care of the earth justice. Really calling out for righteousness, seeking the divine in the earth. Veneration of the trees, veneration of the sacred Asherah, the divine feminine that dwells within the earth, the Gaia, the Asherah that dwells in the trees, the Shekhinah who is here with us, manifest in ourselves, in our bodies, in our birth canals here, in the divine feminine. And they were called to bring justice. We're called to be righteous, tzaddik. They were called to hunt tzayid for those divine sparks as they appear on the earth. And then when we do that, we'll be able to be the Shrinekeeper, to create and care for those sacred spaces that we are called to create and care for. And that is our twist of fate right now for those of us who've chosen the Tzovah today, to this offering that we have to give to the world, is creating and caring for the sacred space, particularly of the planet right now. So for those of you who chose Tzovah today, this has been your reading on this twist of fate that has brought you here today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked the reading, and if you did, please like and subscribe. And thank you to Kohenet Ketzira for providing these beautiful cards of the 8 Netivot Oracle. And I will see you here next time.